Hello everyone, and welcome back to Daily Kaylee 13 Days of Halloween. I hope you all enjoyed the episode from the other day. Today's episode makes episode number 2 out of 13, and it is not about anything paranormal, unlike the first episode. This episode is about Ed Gein, and as the title would lead you to assume, it is about his life and his crimes. Once again, my co-host, Anya, is napping and has no interest in what I'm doing, so maybe she will grace us with her presence before this Halloween season is over. We'll see. I'm not gonna hold out for it. She's a diva. She does her own thing. Now, Ed Gein was like a notorious killer. I mean, I'm sure all of us have heard of him, or we have at least seen the movies that were inspired by him. He inspired the character of Norman Bates. He inspired Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, and most famously, he inspired Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. Before we talk about the crimes that he committed and why he is famous, it's really important to talk about his background, including his upbringing, because he had, I'm not going to say a crazy life. I mean, it wasn't necessarily, outrageous or anything, but his parents were outrageous. They were insane. His mom did most of the parenting because his father was an alcoholic and he was not really involved in the lives of Ed and his brother Henry. But his mother was very controlling and obsessive. She was very, very religious, to the point that it made her, insane. She preached to her sons about the sins of lust and desire, and basically, tried to stray them away from any romantic relationships. When Ed was about 10 years old, his mother moved the family to Wisconsin, and they lived on a farm. Ed rarely left the farm other than going to school. Other than that, he was always at home with his mother. In 1940, Henry and Ed's father died, and at this point, Ed was in his 30s, and Henry was a few years older than him. So they were grown men, and they were still living with their family to help support their mother. In 1944, 4 years after his father's death, Henry and Ed were burning brush on the property to try to clean up the farm, and the fire just got out of control, and once everything died down and the fire was put out, Henry was found dead. Obviously, everyone assumed that he died in the fire. I mean, obviously, that's what you would assume. However, after they have examined his body, the circumstances around his death are very suspicious, and basically, it is believed that Ed is responsible for his death. I will get into that in a little bit. The following year, his mother died in 1945. Now, like I said earlier, his mother led them away from any romantic relationships. They basically had no desire to date women because she was always preaching down their throats about how lust and desire is a sin. So, like I said, he's never known another woman besides his mother. He's lived at home his entire life, and now the only person left in his family is dead. After her death, this is when he became increasingly mentally ill. I mean, he started, just going off the handle. He was slowly, becoming deranged. Ed did not take care of the house, except for one room, his mother's room. He made sure her room was neat and that everything was the way she left it. The rest of the house was very messy. It was nasty. He did not care about anything else besides his mother's room. Ed had a few, like, odd jobs. He was a handyman, and he was actually a babysitter, despite being kind of odd. Throughout these years of Ed living alone, a few residents from his town slowly disappeared over the years. And at first, there was nothing to point at towards Ed. One of the residents of the town that went missing, was Mary Hogan, and she actually ran a tavern that Ed frequently visited. He was there almost every night. Now, one woman by the name of Bernice Warden, she was reported missing on November 16th, 1957. She owned a hardware store in the same town that Ed grew up. And the next day, when her employee came in, obviously she was gone. The cash register was gone, and there was a trail of blood leading out the back. Her son was a deputy sheriff for the town, and his name was Frank. He was suspicious of Ed because of his odd behavior. Once again, he was a handyman. She went missing from a hardware store, and he already thought that Ed was very strange, especially living alone his whole life. Frank confronted Ed. When the authorities arrived at Ed's home that night, they saw Bernice headless, and her body was completely gutted and hanging upside down from the kitchen. Obviously, that's the reason they were there, but upon further investigation, they found crazy things in Ed's home. He had organs that were encased in jars. He had skulls that he was using as soup bowls. He was obsessed with body parts. They obviously I'm getting way ahead of myself. They obviously questioned Ed, and he did confess to killing Bernice, and he also confessed to killing Mary Hogan, the woman that I told you before owned the tavern that he went to. He also admitted that he liked to dig up corpses and cut off their body parts. He practiced necrophilia, and he would make suits of skin to wear around his home. These bodies were typically female bodies, and it was because he wanted to be a woman. It's very controversial. He never admitted this, but I haven't, but the authorities have done lots of research on it, and they've done lots of studies. And he would wear suits of women's skin and his mother's clothing. They aren't sure if it's because, like I said, he never had a woman's touch in his life other than his mother, or if it was because he was so devoted to his mother that when she died, he wanted her to come back. Anyways, he never stood trial because he was committed to Central State Hospital, which is a mental institution. They claimed he was insane, and I'm sure he was. Listening to his background and his crimes, it's very clear to me that he has mental health issues. So, like I said, he was found guilty of these murders, but he never faced trial, and he spent the rest of his life in an institution. He eventually died of cancer in 1984. Kind of a anticlimactic and sad ending to the crazy life of Ed Gein, but I don't know. I don't want to say I feel bad for him because, he's a murderer, but it just makes you wonder how his upbringing could influence him that way and change the way that he saw the world and how he saw people. I don't know, guys. Let me know what you think. This is such a strange case. I remember learning about Ed when I was in criminal justice in high school, and it was just insane. Let me know what you guys think. Tell me your favorite movie with a character that was inspired by Ed Gein. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.